here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the turn of the guitarist, songwriter and performer. It's the one and only Richie Stotts, who I spoke to very recently to find out more about life, love, poetry and all the other groovy stuff. Was a member of the punk metal band. It was the Plasmatics from the late 70s into the mid 80s, then formed King Flux and went on to various other musical projects and other parts of life. Anyway, you're going to find out more about that and lots of other stuff in this fascinating interview. So after several minutes of interesting but casual chat, we get down to the exciting subject of the early formative years. Richie, it's over to you.
I think I went through a couple of different musical awakenings. I started off. Well, I was born in 1953, so I'm 10, 11 years behind you. So I started really probably getting into listening to music, the 60s music. I think I had an older brother, and he liked a lot of 1950s music, like Link Ray and Elvis Presley and um, rockabilly type of stuff. I used to listen to his records, but I think when I was around 13, 14, I started seriously listening to music, and that was kind of like the San Francisco scene, Jimi Hendrix, which is Grateful Dead, Jefferson Airplane. And I think I liked music that was a little bit not liked by everybody. That's if somebody liked something, I wanted to like something different.
Yes.
Everybody liked the Beatles. I loved the Rolling Stones, all that stuff. But I was always searching for something that nobody knew. So, like for instance, the Mothers. It could be as eclectic as the Mothers of Invention and Blue Cheer, and I don't know if you know bands like that. The MC5. Um, uh, Things like that. So that's what got me started getting excited about the music scene.
Yes.
And some of those bands were kind of looking back. People don't realize that some of those bands, especially the San Francisco bands, were really kind of outlaw bands. Like people think the Grateful Dead are just like this hippie band, but I mean, those guys were out there,
And did you grow up in New York at this stage?
No, I didn't. I grew up in a small town, a very small town, upstate New York, what we call upstate here, which means, in New York, but upstate. Like it was a couple hours north of New York. It wasn't too far from New York, but it wasn't the suburbs though. Like at a very small graduating class, we had a town. It was a little bit like Andy Griffith, There was a little. Uh, it was even smaller than that, but it was a small town there was no stores in the town, and we just got around like walking through the woods, and if we went out at night, nobody had a car, so if we went out at night, we would meet in the woods and drink some beers, and then we just fall asleep in the woods. So I kind of grew up like that. It was totally different than New York City. But I after high school, I went to college for 2 years and I quit. But I met some artists up there. It was a college that's upstate New York. I quit, but I met some artists, which I ended up becoming friends with them, and they told me, "Why don't you move down to New York?" By that time, I had the crazy idea without not even having a plan, that I wanted to become a musician.
Yes.
And that brings me back to the music that I kind of like, which was like like I said, the psychedelic scene and sort of the heavier stuff like the Stooges or the MC5. Um, some of the British bands, of course, there was the Kinks. I have to think about all this stuff, but I think my first love that I really loved was the blues, and I loved the blues because I could play the guitar along with it. I learned how to play guitar against the blues. Like I didn't learn how to play like Beatles songs. I learned how to play along with Jimmy Reed and that stuff's like tricky, and it teaches you timing and stuff, and you get to play little solos and stuff. And I still love that music. And I'm not a blues guitar player.
Mm.
I'm not that good, but I just love that music. Speaking of that, I just the other night I was just it was like late at night. It was around 11 o'clock, and I just was watching some old blues stuff on YouTube, which I love, and it's just great stuff. So um, eh, uh, what happened was I went to college after high school, and that's where I really learned how to play guitar because I was around so many people that I could ask, "Hey, how do you play this song? How do you play that song? How do you play this song?" So you pick it up instead of like sitting in my house trying to figure stuff out. I was around a lot of other people, a lot of kids. I was 17, 18 years old, and during that time, I decided that I wanted to be a musician. Going back to what I said, I had no idea. And my friend, who was an artist, moved to New York, and I followed him, and we lived together for a while. Um, came down here. He got a loft with his girlfriend, blah blah blah. Moved in with him. We even had a band for a little bit. But when I came to New York, everything changed
Mm.
because
Yes.
people are like, "Hey, have you heard of the New York Dolls? Have you heard of speaking of David Bowie?" Then I fell in love with that whole scene. You
Yes,
know,
absolutely. But you
yeah,
would
I
have
was,
been, I was going to say, because you would be the perfect age, really, of sort of kind of being, as you started to get so tuned into music, of that kind of change in the 60s of sort of seeing like the early bands like the Beatles and the Stones and the Kinks and the Who. But then that you mentioned the psychedelic bands like,
yeah,
Jefferson Airplane, and then obviously the Grateful Dead and the Doors and that psychedelic
Doors,
time.
yeah,
Did
yeah.
you, did sort of that summer of love period, which was 67, did you sort of think, God, that you were about 14, 15 at that time? Did you think this is it? I'm getting this is going to be my life from now on. I'm just going to form a band, live in community, sort of kick against the man,
I,
kick.
well, a little bit. I hadn't quite got. I was still in high school there. I remember. I don't know what year it was, but I remember some albums I got when they first came out. I got the Doors album pretty much when it came out. I got the Jimi Hendrix album. I think it came out in July of '68. I'm just guessing here. I got that album. I just loved it. Um, I I entertained the thought of like, oh yeah, I should move to California, but I had a very conservative. That's another thing. I had a very conservative father, and he wasn't out for any of that stuff, Um, but once I left, once I left my home, which was at 17, he didn't care what I really did. I mean, he supported me, um, but yes, there was a certain sense of the revolution and stuff. And, that brings me to the MC5, which is a quick story here. And it's kind of a funny story. Um, I just loved the MC5. Now, my hippie friends, the Grateful Friend, they didn't really like the MC5 as much. And I like that. I still think Kick Out the Jams is just a fantastic song. And everybody thought they were crap at the time. They're garbage and stuff. But there was a certain energy that they had on that live. I don't know if you're familiar with that album, Kick Out the
Yes,
Jams.
absolutely. We love that one.
That album has everything that it's kind of Motorhead, it's like excitement, it's like kind of falling apart, and yeah, maybe it's out of tune, and it's like who cares? It's got the right attitude. And what happened was I remember I went to the store, and this was when that album came out. I was there's a a department store. It was called Caldors. It doesn't matter. And I my mother was buying me, I think, like schools for the clothes for the clothes for school in the fall, which I hated. She would buy me the crappiest clothes and stuff, and I slipped in the MC5 album and the Mothers of Invention.
Right.
um, Freak out. Freak out. They're not, like I hate when people say they like, oh, I'm into Zappa. I go, I'm into the Mothers. You know what I mean? Like, if you get what I mean. I mean,
Yes.
it's the Mothers. I mean, I like Frank Zappa, but those first couple albums of the Mothers of Invention were just outrageous. And well, it's a totally different type of music than the MC5. But the MC5, I got that album and I had it inside. It's a very few albums have this. The writing, the manifesto of the White Panthers is in there. It's like, revolution, we're going to kick out the jams and all this crap. So fast forward many years later. I think this was probably about 20, 25 years ago. And at this time, I was out of the Plasmatics, and I was like struggling, with money and stuff. And I started doing, construction. I started doing gardening in New York and stuff like that. And I'm in a hardware store picking up some tools for the morning. And this guy comes up to me and he says, "Hey man, are you Richie Stotts? In the Plasmatics?" I go, "Yeah." He says, I'm Wayne Kramer from the MC5. I said, "What are you doing in here?" He says, "Oh, I'm picking up some painting supplies. I mean, I got a job." And I said, "I'm doing the same thing." And, and then about another drop another 20 years ahead, I got the chance to play with him at one of these they have these Joey Ramone birthday parties. After he died, they kept having these yearly birthday parties. So I got to play with Wayne, and I got him to sign the record
Oh my
to my
God, that's
mother. So,
amazing.
and
Yes.
it says, "To my comrade, Richie Stotts." I was like, "Yeah." And then I started saying, "Hey, you never got, yeah, I sent you $5 to the White Panthers. I never got any information," like back in 1968. And then I got contacted. He had passed away by this time. They did a tribute album a couple years ago, and it's like a bunch of songs, and there's some kind of famous people and some not so famous people like me on the record. I think there's Alice Cooper, and then there's some uh, Henry Rollins and the guy from all these characters on it. And I got to play on that record one song with this band. Wayne Kramer's not on it, but it's some kind of it's a record. So there's a whole it's funny how life goes on. Like,
Yes, well, absolutely. That's quite nice, actually. Yeah, I know that there was a great version that I remember. Lemmy from Motorhead did I think, was one of those celebration nights of the MC5 because he was a massive fan. I think, did they do Ramblin' Rose or one of those
yeah,
numbers?
probably.
And that,
The song I played on was a song called "Baby Won't You," Baby Wants You. It's on it's a record that's out there. It's called "Call Me Animal" or something like that. But like I said, Wayne Kramer's not on there. But it's a tribute thing, and
yes.
so I got to play with one of my heroes, and Lemmy's another. So going back to, like I said, I didn't want to like go off on one of these tangents, but when I came to New York, if you want to hear it in chronological order, I came to New York, and I kind of just got involved, just got turned on, got exposed,
Got
and
exposed and turned on.
also I was hanging out with a lot of artists, which I think is really important. A lot of musicians, like at least for me, being in the art world and that was a big thing in New York at the 70s. Art and music was very close,
Yes.
so well, I would say, you know, the appreciation for Bowie and T Rex, and it's beyond a little bit of just rock and roll. But at that time too, CBGB's was opening,
Yes,
and
well, that was probably a major moment, and I guess had Max's Kansas City opened at that stage?
it well, no, yes, well, that's there's like two schools of thought, or
They-
two schools of
yes,
thing.
there are,
There's the
aren't there?
Maxis crowd and the CB's
So you had the
GB.
Warhol gang and the artist, and you know,
Well, I thought, no, I think, well, how I see it was like, the Maxis scene was a little bit older and a little bit more clicky, and like a little bit more fashionable. Uh, that would be, if you go to Max's, you're going to get a lot of attitude, and it'll be like the people really dressing up and chains, and like it's more,
did
which I
Wayne
love.
did Wayne County go to Max's or CBGB's then?
Well, I think Wayne was more of a Max's person.
Right, because you
Yeah,
probably got the superstars there, didn't you, in
yeah,
Max's?
yeah. So if you go into the Max's thing, it was more of a yeah, it's like I don't want to say poser crowd, but the good poser crowd. Like
Yes.
like CVGV's was just more of a, it was a dump, and I went there. I started going there, and I saw television, and Patti Smith used to open for television. It was just Patti Smith with Lenny Kaye
Yeah.
and her. And I used to go see television. I go, oh no, Patti Smith is playing again. I would just like, come on, let's get that over with. I wanted to see television. You know what I mean? Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So, but I saw television, Patti Smith, Blondie, the Ramones, all that stuff right there, right. But the Ramones hadn't even started at the beginning,
Yes.
when CBGB started. The band that was great, there was this whole thing. I don't know if this might be going to too much detail, but I love television, but I love Richard Hell in the band because he was kind of comic relief. He'd come out and do Blank Generation,
Yes.
and the guitar players would like kind of jam and stuff like that. But Hell was kind of had this attitude. So what happens? There's another funny story. I had a girlfriend. And she was from Bulgaria. Can you believe it? Like my first girlfriend. Like she used to, she was kind of arty. She used to have this big like hat, like a big broad brim hat. I remember with a flower on it and stuff like that. And she used to walk around. I'm just telling you, this is New York, and she used to walk around with this coat. It looked like mink, but it was skunk. So if it rained a little bit, it smelled like skunk. So I remember one time she used to smoke cigarettes. I was a hick from upstate New York, a rube. I had like kind of long. I tried to make it like a shag haircut, like Bowie and stuff. And I never quite kind of got. I never quite had the Genoa blah blah to really get into that look. But anyway, so I remember one time she had this. We went to this party, and she had this. She smoked cigarettes out of a holder, right? And here
Nice.
I am. Here I am with jeans and stuff, with the Bowie haircut. And I remember we went to this party, and like there's this smoke coming out of her hat, and she had caught her hat on fire with the uh, with the cigarette. And it was really funny. And when somebody told her that your hat's on fire, she had sort of like that French attitude. Oh fuck, the freak, freak. So all this stuff you start learning about in New York. You learn about good food from other people. You learn about, even now I try to be a little sophisticated, although always falls flat on my face. But
Yes.
I still have fun trying to do it. But anyway, so so we like what I was going to say. Oh yeah, so I started going out with this girl from Bulgaria, and I go over to visit her. Go over to her house all the time, her apartment, and right, she says, "Oh yeah, Richard Lloyd's he lives above me," and I got to know him. The guitar. His name. He was the guitar player for television,
Yes.
and he goes, why don't you bring your guitar up? Let me see what you can do. And we kind of had a little jam thing. So a couple days, a week later or something, I had gone seen the Heartbreakers at
Johnny
CVGB's.
Thunders.
Yeah, yeah. So this was a big thing. Hell left television, and then it's almost like a super band. You know what I mean? Thunder. The rumor is that Thunders and Hell are starting to band. It's such small potatoes. You know what I mean? Like this is such a small world. Nowadays, people would go, "What?" So so I like Lloyd says to me, he says, you're a pretty good guitar player, Hell's starting this band with Johnny Thunders. He says they're looking for a guitar player. Why don't you, I can hook you up with an audition. So I auditioned for the Heartbreakers. I don't think many people auditioned with them, but at least I got to play with Thunders, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, absolutely. That must have been an amazing little moment. And also when he was probably quite coherent as well.
Yeah, yeah. I remember going into the studio and Thunders had just cut his hair, so it was short. But there was all these people with hair that was orange and green in there. There was like all the cool people were in there. I was like, whoa, this is like really cool. So it was like an experience, and
I would
that's it.
imagine there was a lot of attitude because Richard's quite got a lot of attitude, hasn't he?
I guess so. I that was the only time I met Hal. That's the only time I ever met Richard Hell. I've never met him again after that, and I've always kind of been. We'd like to ask him if he remembers me. And then much later on, I became friends with the replacement for Hal, Fred Smith, and Fred Smith has like a little winery a little winery upstate. And I've stopped by and I bought a couple bottles of his wine. And he's really a super nice guy.
Nice. Did you just before that, because you would have been at that age where, you're trundling through your teens and everything's going well, the music every week, there must be this classic album. And then towards the end of the 60s and then 70s, you had the death of, Brian Jones, which was like a bit of a shock. The first death is always a bit, when you're at a young age, you don't expect it, especially, well, you expect your grandparents or elderly people, but not somebody that close. And then you have Hendrix, Morrison and Joplin all dying. The Beatles break up. I know you're not a big fan. And then sort of you had
What do you
Charles
mean I'm
Manson.
not a big fan?
I thought you weren't a big fan of the Beatles.
Oh, I'm a huge fan of the Beatles. But I mean, what I'm saying is that I wanted to own something different than the
Yes,
Beatles.
but you had that kind of like all that coming on one year. It was almost, I would imagine you were sort of like, I'm doing the maths here, 16, weren't you? About 16, 17. And that all happens. You had, yeah, the Manson, the murder of that, Altamont not going well. The Woodstock kind of festival, it films well, doesn't it? But people who were there say it was like complete chaos and hell as well. So, it kind of ends on a bit of a downer. Were you tempted to go to Woodstock, by the way? Because you would have been kind of in that area.
I didn't. At that time, I was working in a French restaurant upstate New York, and the busboy that I worked with went. My father. Well, no, I did not go to Woodstock. No, my father didn't want me to do like like I said, I had a bit of a disciplinarian father, and
What was his trade or job? Was he a policeman?
my father was he was great. I don't. We got along great. In a lot of ways he was strict, but once like I've said before, once I left the house, he was coming down to the Plasmatics shows at CBGB's, But my father was from Iowa, and he has a mysterious past. Something happened in Iowa. He had another he had a child. I have a half brother, which I haven't seen in like 40 years, but he had he left Iowa somewhere in the 30s, lived out in California, I don't know, but he ended up in New York, and he was in World War II.
Right.
So, but he had me like like in his 40s. It was like 40. I don't even know what days, but
So was he based in the UK during the Second World War? Was he on?
no, North Africa.
Oh, right. Because I come from, I'm in East Anglia, which is on the east coast of England, Britain, and that's
Okay.
where there's like 30 odd, 40 odd airfields that were all populated by American servicemen who were these young chaps who obviously came over and ran the bases, did the flying, did the maintenance. They lived here. So there's a lot of stories about American servicemen during the during the
Yeah,
40s.
well, he was in North Africa and Italy. That was his
Right.
deal. Yeah. So, but he never talked about it, and that's a funny thing. I had an uncle too that was an artillery guy in Europe, and the funny thing, I don't want to go into a political thing here, but I find it funny, like how now a lot of people in this country are, oh, the military pro this and wave the flag. My father never talked about the war. He was reluctant to talk about.
Yeah, everybody in the war never spoke about it. I think it was traumatizing and they
Yeah,
just thought,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah. Because it was
they were only 20-year-olds kind of
Yeah,
flying
and it was
bombers.
like I hate to say it, it was really a war. You know what I mean? And it wasn't, not to demean anybody else, but I find there's just too much, um, too much war stuff, going on now, talking about it without realizing, like,
Well, any military person who was in a war like that would just think, you can't, peace is so precious. You would just like do anything for peace. When you see people being blown up or you have
yeah,
your body, you just think that it's just not worth it. It
oh,
just,
right. Right. And my father was very conservative, but he was very pro my brother and me doing anything possible to not get drafted. My brother was really right he was 8 years younger than me, but he concocted some crazy story about his back and he got off.
you must
And
have been quite close to being drafted, actually, weren't you?
I was, I had, I had I had 2 years where my number was called and I missed it, but I had a high number. So I didn't get called. So, anyway, my father, he when he came back, he married my mother, who was well, he was married actually when he left. She was from the Bronx, and her grandparents were actually from Ireland, so there's an Irish side to me. And then my father was more, I don't know, go into the whole thing, but he was from Iowa, Midwestern guy. But they he was like he ended up having a little store, like a five and dime store, and he ended up unfortunately kind of not it kind of went under, and by the time I was in high school he was working in a factory, upstate. So we lived in a middle class nice town, but it wasn't like we had a lot of money, you know what I mean? But my father was able to buy a house for, I think it was like $7,000 or something, or $8,000 in 1953. And when he sold it in 1980, he still was paying back the mortgage. You know what I mean?
Blimey.
So it
Yeah.
wasn't like, but the army, I think, or for the armed forces, was good for him because he got some money to get started, and they had all. It was a different time.
Very different time. My God, yes, you couldn't imagine it, could you really? But
No,
yes, but yeah, so then sort of you obviously, there was like the glam period. We had sort of heavy metal started with people like Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, and obviously slightly Led Zeppelin. They're quite heavy, weren't they? But there was prog rock as well. Did you, and on your side, you had that Laurel Canyon, you had James Taylor, Neil Young, Joni Mitchell,
yeah.
and did you, and America with a Horse with No Name, which was very mysterious lyrics. Were you sort of engrossed in all those musical?
Not as much as I should have been. Not in high school. I think when I got out of high school, I started. it's funny when I went to college for 2 years, I was around a lot of musicians, so I was exposed to like, Bob Dylan and Joni Mitchell, and he's speaking about Joni Mitchell and Neil Young and stuff like that. But going back to Led Zeppelin, I was one of these guys. Speaking of heavy metal, I loved the first Zeppelin album, but I was one of those guys that was like, wow, they sold out on Led Zeppelin two, or whatever that was called, and so I
Oh
was kind.
yes.
I was a bit of a snob in a funny way. Well, because we're coming from the 60s generation, and all of a sudden, like Zeppelin's like kind of like packaging it. So there was a certain resentment to that. Although I love Zeppelin, um,
Yes.
you know, I,
And being in New York, did you come across Suicide at that stage? Had you?
oh yeah, I started them at Max's. Incredible show. I couldn't believe it. The Max's stage, right? It's a little tiny little club, but it had that red shiny um, backdrop like Johnny Carson or something. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, and I was like, a suicide comes out and there's a guy just going dun 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 dun, 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 and there's this guy singing. I was like, what the hell is this stuff? It blew me away. And that's funny as they say that because I sort of Ramones at CBGB's and I sort of Ramones at Max's. And when I sort of Ramones at Max's, it changed my understanding of Ramones. I says, this is brilliant because it was like black and white. It was very obvious this band was a. These were like art bands.
Yes.
Like we're talking about art. They were like conceptual, whether they really meant it or not, but they were like, it was like pop. It was like Klaus Aldenberg or something. I don't know if you're familiar. It was like, it was just like, this is very smart in a dumb way.
Yes. Well, it
I
was.
mean,
I would imagine Suicide was so unusual that would have been.
yes, yeah. And like, I think now when I go, and I haven't been really into the music scene for a while, but now I'm kind of back into it, checking out new bands and stuff. And I'm starting to see that there is some of that stuff happening now, which makes me happy.
Yeah.
Instead
Well,
of just getting
absolutely.
yeah, instead of just getting up there and you know, I don't know.
And your guitar playing, were you practicing and sort of developing a lot during this period? Were you sort of there? You mentioned you're sort of been at college playing with people, getting them to show you stuff. Were you also a bedroom perfectionist going through it, trying to learn and getting better?
Well, I think because I kind of got a bit of a late start when like I was 16, 17. Um, Once I started going, I practiced every day. I no matter what. I one time I hitchhiked around Ohio and New York, and I had a guitar. I took it apart, unscrewed the neck. It was an electric guitar, and I put it in my bag, and I hitchhiked around, and I would assemble it again just because I didn't want to miss one day of practicing the guitar. And so I played a lot, but I think when I came to New York and I saw the Ramones, and when I heard the Sex Pistols, that was a big one for me. That
Steve
that for
Jones, did you
the,
did you think Steve Jones's guitar just blew your mind?
yeah, that album is brilliant. I mean, and I don't want to hear people tell me like, oh, like he didn't play on the album. First of all, I don't give a shit, and second of all, I'm like, why not? There's nothing like fancy going on. It's all about the sound, the attitude on that, and it's well crafted song. It's brilliant. That album is brilliant, and I like. Oh, I never started Pistols, but I saw the Damn come over here, when,
Right.
and I saw them open for the Dead Boys. No, the Dead Boys opened them 4 nights in a row at CBGB's. It was brilliant, and so, but when I heard the special, like I love the Ramones, but when I heard the Sex Pistols, and I was like, "Holy fuck, this! I can do this." You know what I mean? I
And did
can't
the and
play.
did the, and people did the Clash and the Buzzcocks come along as well and think with a lot of attitude? Did they also
I,
intrigue your sort of taste buds, or were you a
I
little bit?
I like those bands, but they're like to me like they have that sing along sound. You know what I mean? It's great British. Like a lot, to me, like the British bands are very. Uh, they always have like a good vocal core. Like I mean, like that band. What's the band playing right now? That the two brothers, that
Oh,
Gallagher.
the Oasis.
Yeah, like they have this great sound singing, and I mean, we talk about Queen and the Beatles and all that stuff, but to me, like, uh, I really kind of don't know what I'm talking about, but like to me, the Clash had that sing along, almost like we were in a bar, you know what I mean, singing along, and I think that I like that, but I didn't really care about the political element and everything like that. I just like the Sex Pistols. I didn't care about the politics. They just had the sound that I personally like. It was punk. Where I think the Clash, or maybe it's a little bit smarter, um, and it's great too. Steve Bader's came. I saw. I'm going to drop a name. Steve Bader's. I saw. I kind of knew him well, and Steve Bader's came up to me one day, and he says, I was talking to Joe Strummer, and I'm supposed to tell you to say hello from him for you, and that made me feel like wow. And I got to see them play here when I think around the Sandies, that 19. It was the early '80s when they were
Right. So
really they were probably at one of their peak there, and they were great. They were just fantastic.
yes,
But I still like, and the Damned. I love the Damned, but I like Neat Neat Neat. You know that
yes,
thing.
absolutely.
Um, you know, there's a couple when Rat Scabies in the original band, but I think Steve Jones, whoever played, people say, "Oh, Chris Spedding," and everything. Such nonsense. I don't care.
No.
That was a great freaking record.
Yeah, I
And
done an interview with Chris Spedding. He definitely didn't play on it. So
I know, but that was the rumor because people didn't want to give the stupid band any credit. That's my impression. But I love that. But that anyway, that was a big influence. And I think I threw all my guitar playing out the window and started all over again with that.
yes, well,
And
absolutely.
and and um
And then how did you start to sort of form a band at this stage? Because obviously you're at a perfect age for this, and there's a musical trend appearing, isn't there? There is definitely going to be a chapter which is going to be punk rock, and you're right there.
well, it's like like when I moved to New York, it might sound a little like, oh well, you got to play audition for the Heartbreaks, but it was hard. Like I mean, I didn't have much money. I was living with a couple different people at different times, living in a loft that had no heat, and I was doing crazy jobs. Like I was selling knives for a while, like these cutlery sets, and going door to door and uh, you know, telling some people this bullshit story that these knives were this and that, and it was kind of a ripoff. And I would sell them, and I didn't really have a clue to what I was doing. Well, this is sort of an interesting thing, though, and it's a bit of a side. Just for what I was doing, I at this time I caught like hepatitis. Right, I got really
Hmm.
sick, and I was doing this, telling you, selling these knives, and I mean, it was a good job, but it was like I learned never to be a salesman by doing this stuff. I said I'll never become a sales, because it was like you had to go door to door, not to houses, but to businesses, and
Yeah.
you'd have a pitch. And I actually made some good money for a short amount of time, but then I got sick, and it kind of changed my life. And I was taking some jazz guitar lessons, and I needed a job. And this guy says, "Hey, they're looking for. You should look for. They're looking for copyists." And I didn't know what a copyist was. And a copyist is somebody that writes. Follow me on this. Like if a composer writes. I used to play clarinet in high school and everything, so I have a little bit of a trained background. So a copyist is somebody that takes a score. Like there might be like it could be a whole orchestra, and like say there's violins and trumpets and everything like that. The copyist extracts each of the parts and writes them down.
Yeah.
Um, so I pulled out this is the old days, the yellow pages. I don't know if you have yellow pages over there.
Oh yes, we yes, I was excited when that came.
So
It was
I
almost
just went. I
starting to
said
read.
I looked up copyists in the yellow pages. I pulled out the page, the yellow pages, and I started calling these people. The first person I called was a guy named Arnold Arnstein. He just happens to be like the most famous copyist in the United States, and he basically specializes in opera and classical music, and he did like so. If the Metropolitan Opera gets a funding to do a new opera, Arnie, that we used to call him Arnie, and he looked like Einstein, an old timer, and he had an office with like papers all over the place, and he was a real hoot, right, character. And I started working for him, and so that's what I was doing. And all these people were coming. I don't know if you know who David Amran is. David Amran is like this part of the Beat Generation with Allen Ginsberg, but he was a flute player. So he would be a copyist. So I was kind of like Arnie's right hand man, organizing, how to do this and do that and everything like that. There was some other people. And Arnie did like Leonard Bernstein and all these John Carl Menotti, um, uh, you know, all all the 12 tone boys, as he called them, like Milton Babbitt, and but it was really a great experience to meet all these musicians and stuff. But during that time, I like I said, I got sick, and I decided to straighten my act up. So I got this job. It was a steady job. I got paid, and Arnie was kind of cool. And I'm going to cut to this thing. I did have a band at this time with my friend who going back to his name is Michael David. He's a painter. He's a great painter. And we were friends. And I went to school where I went to school. It was an upstate school called Fredonia. We met up there. We came to New York. I was living with him on and off. I had met Johnny Thunders by this time. And we started our own band. He was an artist, but he was going to sing and play bass, and we didn't know what the hell. We didn't know what we were doing. Absolutely, we were just like we didn't know what we were doing. And my vision was that it would be kind of like a punky band, but with jamming in it. You know what I mean? Which now is kind of like there are bands like that. Like you would start off a song, it'd be like, and then I would do I love Jimi Hendrix and stuff. I would have like crazy guitar solos.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So the, the this manager went, this guy named Rod Swenson saw our band, and he was friends with one of the guys in the band. And to make a long story short, he approached me and asked me if I would be interested in starting a band. And the deal was, I have some money, I can fund the first record. Who wouldn't turn this down? I just want to ask you this question. I will fund the band for a recording. I want you to put the band together because I don't know how to put a band together. I want you to write the songs, but I write the lyrics. Very okay. This is your job. You write the songs. I write the lyrics. But I want Wendy Williams, who was working up in one of his theaters in 42nd Street Show World. He had a peep show managing these stuff. But at the same time, he had started doing videos of Blondie and the Ramones. So he's an interesting guy.
Yes.
He was a Yale graduate in art and stuff. And I was like, this guy's like, this is pretty cool. And he said, but I want Wendy to sing. The problem is Wendy never sang in a rock band before. And I was like, okay, that'll be fine with me. You know what I mean? Sure. I was like 24 years old. That's how it was. And that's how the band started. So I knew a guy named Jose Funahara, a good friend of mine. He was a Japanese guy. And he had a great bass. He looked great. He had a shaved head. He looked fantastic. And Wendy was like a stripper, you know what I mean? Um, I mean, for a better word, you know,
Yeah.
and uh, so we started the band like that. We auditioned. We got a drummer, a Stu Deutsch, and it was Jose Funahara on bass, myself on guitar, and we had these fast. I mean, it was ridiculous. Like I don't even know what type of music at the time we were doing. I just, I was being pushed by Rod to make songs that are really fast, and I like fast stuff. So we ended up kind of doing these, very like that's what we were doing. And Wendy would sing, and we did a audition at CBGB's. Sorry, I was clicking my pen. Sorry, that's
Yeah,
annoying.
no, that's okay. But was Rod something like I don't know, a Colonel Parker meets Malcolm McLaren? Was he kind of a real visionary of what could the potential of this?
Well, I have a bit of a complicated relationship with Rod Swenson. I love working with him in the early days. It was great. He was super encouraging along with Wendy. Wendy and Rod were partners. They were uh, you know they they yeah, they were what's the word? Yeah,
A
partner.
couple? Oh,
Couple. Yeah, they were a couple.
they were a
Uh,
couple.
yeah, they were a couple. But he always wanted to keep that kind of secret at the time. So, you know, right, so they were a couple, and they worked together, and Rod kind of pretty much guided her. I mean, that's how I would say it. He wrote the lyrics, kind of worked on her separately. So, like, say we're going to work on a new song. Jose and Stu and I and Rod would work on the song,
Yes.
and then he would go back, figure out some lyrics, work with Wendy with the lyrics. Then she would come in, and then we would put it all together. So we
Yes.
did that a couple of times. So the band progressed, although he was sort of a visionary. Now I'm not sure what the relationship with Malcolm McLaren. What's his name? Malcolm.
Malcolm McLaren from
Yeah,
he
yeah.
sort of
I'm not sure.
he came over to New York, saw I think the
Yeah.
New York Dolls, went back, created or helped shape the Sex Pistols, and then he went on to do other bits with other bands, didn't he? But that was his kind of moment. It all came together beautifully for Malcolm for that
Yes.
album, and he seemed to be absolutely on it during that stage, and everything he did, different record labels giving him loads of money, then chucking him out, and him picking up the check. So he did well, but
Yeah. Yeah.
and then
I
everyone then contests who the brilliant brains was behind the band. But I think it was probably everybody's input that helped. There wasn't one particular. It wasn't like David Bowie. It was like there was this, Johnny Rotten, there was Steve Jones, there was Glenn Matlock, there was Paul Cook, there was Johnny Rotten, obviously, and Malcolm. They all helped to make this moment, didn't they?
Well, I think there are some parallels with that. I think with Rod, um, I think that the band formed. I don't think there was a master. There wasn't really like a master plan for the band. I think he kind of had a master plan for Wendy. And what happened was, um, when the when we started off, we got on stage, and I mean, Wendy took her top off the first time we played, right? And I was like, gee, man, I gotta like get my act together in this band because I got my bass player is like she looks fantastic. Wendy is like, I don't know, she's kind of feral, you know what I mean? Like, like, oh my God. So I think that's where I started saying I gotta get in on the act here, quote unquote. And like now I'm gonna go back, like reaching back to my mothers of invention, love and everything like that. I first started off, I think I sprayed my hair silver and I was like, that's lame. You know what I mean? This is lame. And I was watching Taxi Driver and I said, shit, this is it. This is the answer, right? And I think I told my drummer, or our drummer, I should say, Stu, and I said, "You should do that." And he said, "I ain't gonna do it." And I remember talking to Rod and Wendy. I said, "I think if I get the Mohawk, it's gonna be cool." And they were like, "If you're up for it, go." And so I did get a Mohawk haircut. The girl that I was telling you about before from Bulgaria, she was just like, she was really pissed off at me. But I did that, and then I constantly try to outdo myself. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like, well, wait a second, the Mohawk's not enough. I like what the Dolls were doing and Bowie with the androgynous look, but they always looked sort of feminine to me. You know what I
Well,
mean?
yes.
And I wanted to be more like, well, I'm just gonna like put a nurse's outfit and look like a guy, a man with a nurse's outfit, and really ham it up, and
Because
really get.
were you aware then at that stage that guy from Mud and also the guy from Slade, who both had quite bizarre looks to them, which were neither, they just looked very quirky, didn't they?
Well, I was, but I can only say looking back in on retrospect, right? Or what's the word? Looking back now, I'm a big. I love Slade. Like, come on, feel the noise. That video, those guys playing, it's just unbelievable. And
Yes.
um, but I think I think that I saw Captain Sensible come over, and he had a little tiny tutu, and he was just running around like a maniac. And I was like, I think sort of my act was partially inspired from that manic energy on stage. MC5 had it. Slade sort of has it, but they're little. Yes, I was. I'm not sure if I would say I was drawing from that, but I was aware of that, and so it wasn't just like I knew I wasn't like a punk guy that was on King's Road in London. Those guys with the big ponies, just spiking.
Yes.
This was I'm taking the Mohawk, but I'm wearing a tutu or like I put a nurse's outfit on, and I spent a lot of detail on it. Like I had to go to the nurse's place. I bought the nurse's thing. I got the name tag for some crazy people on. I had white hose and white shoes, and then all of a sudden I says, "Oh, let me try a French maid thing." So I went to this transvestite store, and it just takes a lot of balls. I hate to say it. I mean, you're kind of uncomfortable doing this stuff. You go to a nurse's a medical supply place and try on a nurse's outfit, and you sort of say, "Well, I'm just doing this for a show." And then I go to a transvestite. I got a French maid's thing, and then all of a sudden I says, "Oh, I did this thing with a ballerina with a tutu." And then I said, "Well, I could put the tutu on the nurse. I started swapping stuff out and switching. Eventually, I think I did a Playboy thing. I made my own Playboy thing up. And for the beginning of the band, is to talk about the sort of the conceptual thing, like you were talking about Rod. Rod was very important in creating that atmosphere that let me do that. But I will say that all that stuff was my concoction, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And then that creates the way you play. So when you get up on stage and you're going to hit the stage and you got freaking a nurse's outfit on, you're going to act insane.
Yes, well, absolutely. And I
You
guess you had Twisted Sister started circulating on the scene at the same time.
I didn't see them till much later on, you know what I mean? And I like Twisted Sister a lot, but they were a little bit more traditional in my opinion, you know what I mean? Like the singer was definitely acting wild and stuff, but they were doing what I would call they were more doing the cover tunes circuit out in the suburbs and stuff like that, which we eventually started doing ourselves. Like we were playing CBGBs and Maxes, but we really kind of cut our teeth to say by playing the cover tune circuit out and I think that like kind of the blue collar
Yes.
stuff where a lot of the bands at CBGBs would be like, how can you be playing in like New Jersey? You know what I mean? But that's where the best stuff was. And I give credit to Twisted Sister because they I mean they could do cover songs. And I say that in a very high regard. I mean, we weren't playing Smoke on the Water, you know what I mean? We were
Yes.
playing our crazy Plasmatic songs. And then
And
of course, yeah.
I was going to say you suddenly start to be very prolific on your songwriting, don't you, or the music side of it? Because the first album, you basically co-wrote all those tracks, don't you?
A majority on the first album, yes.
New Hope for the Wretched.
Yes.
So what was the process like? Did you bring the music and then someone brought the lyrics and then you just then
Yeah. Well, that's what I was saying. Okay. Like I was saying before that, and that we would work, let's say, okay, the process was I would come up with a riff or an idea for a song, kind of formed. And I would present that to our manager, Rod, right? And the other people. And we would pick out, well, that one sounds pretty good. Why don't we work on that? So then we would probably almost like write this, put it together. And then he would put some lyrics down and all the lyrics were his idea. Well, in the beginning, I think I kind of contributed some oh yes and oh no's and stuff like that. But he put down the lyrics and worked with Wendy to see if it worked with her, and then we would put the whole thing together.
right, my God, yes, that's good. And you
I mean,
signed
these
for
are not Beatles songs, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? These are
but but you signed to Stiff Records, don't you?
yes, yes. They that was great. Stiff Records. Oh, they were so fantastic. They came over from to see our show. Right.
Was that Dave Robinson?
Yeah. Yeah. He die? He died.
No, I think he's alive. Let's not
Oh,
mind. I think
yeah.
he's still going with us. He's still with us.
Do you have his contact number
I
information?
I probably do because I have done an interview with Dave actually.
I'd
So
love to like just say contact him about something. But Dave,
and
Dave
Jack
Rock,
Riviera as well, wasn't he?
what?
Jake Riviera was his co-man as well, wasn't he? But
I don't
Dave,
remember. Listen to this, a funny story. They come over and saw us play. My parents were at the show, right? This was out in Long Island. By that time, we had built up quite a name in New York. We had played, we were blowing up cars by now. Do you see what I mean?
yes.
And so Dave Robinson comes over with the gang from London. And it's like, holy fuck, there's English people, you know what I mean? And my parents are talking to him. And I'm like, what are they talking to my father about? And so when we went over to London, we go over to the offices, and I remember Robinson calls me into the office. He's like, "Come on over here," and he goes like this. He had they were talking like my father, like with that accent, like a dry Midwestern. I can't even do it, what they were doing, but they had mastered that accent. I was like, wow, and I thought it was so funny, you know what I mean? And like they were talking to my parents at the show, and like what they were doing was like listening, listening. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. So I got a better appreciation for an
Yes,
American
absolutely.
accent. You know what I mean?
That's nice. That's nice. Did and then you work with Jimmy Miller. He's your producer on this album, isn't he?
Oh yeah, I love Jimmy Miller. Now, I don't. Oops, sorry. My manager, Rod Swenson. I don't know if he is as crazy about Miller as me, but Jimmy Miller goes like this to me. I said, Jimmy, man. I did a song. He said, I'm always playing the same crap. It's like these Chuck Berry riffs. And he says, Keith Richards made a living at that. Keep it up, and, but he was a character, like where's Jimmy? Where's Jimmy? And you get a phone call the next day. Oh, I'm in, I'm in like Amsterdam. I got to get some royalties for like, um, from Spencer Davis. He was a character. And I think he showed moments of brilliance when he was there, but I don't know. I really like Jimmy Miller, so I just gonna end it right there.
Yes. Well, that's always
Eh,
nice.
and also he introduced me to Motorhead.
Well, absolutely. Oh, yes, because Stiff was. Yeah, that's right, isn't it? I think
Yeah,
because Larry Wallace was on Stiff Records, and I think he was one of the first guitarists for Motorhead, wasn't he?
and,
When
and,
Lemmy was putting together the band.
and there's four great Stones albums. I love them: Exile, Beggars, Sticky Fingers, and
Let it.
Let It Bleed. Let It Bleed.
Yeah, but that all
Those are
featured.
Miller. What?
But you know who's the guitarist on that, don't you?
Well, you mean the guy with the blonde hair? You know what I mean?
Mick Taylor.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I do know that. I do know that. Oh, listen to this. I was in Chicago one time, many, many years later. Actually, I was with a group of people and listened to Chicago. We were listening to the Chicago Symphony in the park, and
God,
it
I thought
was
you were talking about the band there. I thought, oh, that's it. I didn't
no.
see
So
that one.
we're listening in a classical concert, right? And
Yes.
it was really great. But I wanted to kind of like I was getting antsy, like I wanted to go get a beer, or something like that. So we snuck out and we walked down to this corner bar, right? And like go into the bar and I had a beer, and then there's another door and handwritten on a piece of paper, it says Jimmy Miller tonight at 9. I was like, it couldn't be. Not Jimmy Miller.
Keith
What's
Richards.
the other guitar player? I can't.
Ronnie Woods.
Who's the guitar player? What we just mentioned?
Mick Taylor.
Yeah, Mick. I went in. Mick Taylor's playing at 9. I waited a little bit, and it was so. I felt so bad. There was nobody in there. It's like Mick Taylor's in there playing by himself. So anyway, the music business is rough.
It is rough, I know. Well, I remember somebody telling me that, I don't know, John Entwistle was performing a solo show at the Ritz in New York and kept saying, "Is there anybody out there?" And they were having to say, "No, it's filling up." And it was like, oh, it's not filling up at all. No one wants to come and see John Entwistle's solo show, do
Oh, I
they?
would have loved that. If I had known that, but I probably wasn't here. But no. But
But
yeah.
yes,
Anyway,
but
I
it
love
was
Miller. Jimmy.
yeah. What do you mean? Yes, and dear old Mick Taylor, who I mean, really, I mean that for those four albums are the ones, but they are the ones that feature him, which I think adds that. The ones with Ronnie, we love Ronnie, but
Well,
they're
wait a
not.
second. Wait a second. On Exile, that's Ronnie.
No, no, Ronnie's not there. You look at
Okay.
those four albums. Look at
Okay.
the guitar.
Okay. I'll give it to you. Okay, you're
Because
right.
because when it sort of when Mick Taylor leaves, it's like, oh, actually no, the albums aren't that great.
No, the beginning. I still play this every time I'm in a good mood and I want to listen to some rock and roll, and I'm by myself. There's a few choice songs I play, and one of it is um uh always get confused. Give Me Shelter. At the
Yes.
beginning of that is so there's so much time and spacing and patience. And like the drums come in and it's like dun, dun. It's not like brown, brown, brown. It's like so cool. It's like the Stones are just freaking great. And when people say they're not good, you're looking for an argument from me, even though I try to keep my mouth shut. You know.
But yes, I mean it's not good. No, so it's just looking, it's Keith, Mick, and then Taylor, Bill Wyman, Charlie Watts. But then you have Nicky Hopkins on piano, Bobby Keys. You have and Jimmy Miller on percussion as well. So there you go. Jimmy's all over the shop there, isn't he? Really.
Yeah, he's great.
But then, yeah. So, what was your touring like at this stage? Have you sort of come to Europe at this stage after the first album?
Yeah, we did. We did. We came. We did a little tour. Oh, well, we came over to the Hammers. We played at. We supposedly played at the Hammersmith, and it got banned. You know what I mean? Banned, whatever. We did. They didn't wouldn't let us play because the GLC didn't were giving us a hard
Oh,
because we had a chainsaw and we had explosions, and we could have done the show. And in my personal feeling, I would have rather done the show without the chainsaw and the explosion. But our manager wouldn't do the show without that. And then he kind of used that as a way of kind of like, well, we got banned and make a poster of it. But I felt sad that we didn't do it because I think I don't think we needed that stuff. I think we could we should have played, and um, he'd take issue with me on that. But I was so disappointed. There was like
yes.
my whole dream in life was to go to England and play, and we had taken. I'd never been on a plane to Europe and all this stuff. We did do a European tour um, later on that I was after the second album. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah,
Beyond the Valley.
yeah.
What was the mood like of the band? This is 1981. Things are changing. Well, musically things have changed a lot. We're in the post-punk period, aren't we? And at that stage, there's like bands are starting to sort of come and bands go in, and in this country, we obviously we had Thatcher, you had Reagan. There was a certain change in attitude and stuff like that. What was the atmosphere like? The second album. Sometimes these can be the tricky ones. Sometimes it's the third album. But what's it? You're still on Stiff Records, aren't you?
Well, well, actually, we switched to Stiff America, which was a different kind of a different feel. Um, we got Dan Hartman, who I really loved. Um, Dan played in Edgar Winter's band, and he did a lot of. He's like a fantastic musician. A little bit different than Jimmy Miller. He produced that record. Um, we had we had Jose left the band before the New Hope record, and we brought John Bouvard in, and he played bass, and we were working on the next album. Then, but for that New Hope, it gets complicated. Beyond the Valley, our drummer Stu Deutsch left, and we brought in temporarily just for the album Neil Smith from Alice Cooper, and he played on the drums. So I think what I would say is that this album, it was sort of. Oh, no, wait a second. I'm wrong about Dan Hartman. This album was sort of self-produced with Swenson. We kind of did this ourselves, and I think the album started switching from not just being kind of fast and punky or however you want to call it to sort of beginning proto metal. You know what I mean?
Right.
There was some metal feel towards it, and I would go how I say it was a little bit more bluesier. You know what I mean? Um, Although you'd probably be hard pressed to find the blues in there, but the riffs were kind of like a little bit more rock bluesy mixed with the Plasmatics, and I think you could start saying maybe a little metal, blues, and punk. That's what I would say. And that album, we did that, and we had a great time. we had done it. I don't know. I think we started doing our second tour of the U.S., which was great. We had an incident out in Milwaukee where Wendy got beaten up, which created a lot of press, which was bad and good, because it was good because it got the band even farther out there, but it focused more on just it just became less focused on what the Plasmatics were and more on just like, oh, we're just like this band that Wendy, pulls her breast out. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so that was, I mean, but it was still I mean, I really like that album. I think it was a good album. And then the third album, which is really an EP, that's the one we did with Dan Hartman,
This
which
is
was called
Metal Priestess.
Priestess, which was a little bit, going more metal. You know what I mean? And at that time, we were instead of listening to the Pistols, I was listening to Judas Priest and Motorhead, and like I was discovering all these bands and kind of rediscovering some of the British bands like Sabbath and stuff like that, and trying to incorporate some of that stuff instead of like kind of going like like punk, like trying, improving our musical chops, you know what I mean?
Yes. Yes,
And
absolutely.
Wendy also was progressing as a singer. She's coming from somebody that never sang in a band, and now she's actually starting to become like a real performer and a real and she really uh expanded herself during these albums, it's like we all do. And but by the time Metal Priestess came, we did another. It's like Spinal Tap. We did another change of drummers, and we added another a bass player. Jean Bouvard left, and we got Chris Romanelli, and um, and then after that, I'm just going to jump. The last album we did, which was Coup d'etat, which was a pretty much straight metal album. We had been signed to Capitol Records, and um, that album was we got a different drummer, TC Tolliver, who is a great drummer, and our bass player that was a Metal Priestess, Chris Romanelli, who was really like more of a metal bass player, great musician. I thought we had a really, really great album in Coup
Mm,
d'etat, and everybody
yes.
and everybody had progressed musically, and especially Wendy did a great job. So all those albums, there's like an arc to that whole thing. Like
Yes.
that's one thing I loved about our band is that I mean, we really it was like an arc of music from sort of I hate I hate calling it punk and stuff. I always like to call it the plasmatics. It wasn't punk, it wasn't rock, it wasn't metal, it's the plasmatics. And it shows like a real evolution from this kind of and also another thing, and I call this, I don't want to put the band down. The only thing that was feeling towards this time was the band was becoming, even though more serious about the music. I felt like we were we were losing a sense of humor. You know what I mean?
Right.
And and I felt that that was really important, and I know the people that really love the band, like the very like eclectic group of people, from Debbie Harry to like the pimply faced kid from New Jersey. You know what I mean? they 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 saw something they really loved about the band. It wasn't necessarily punk. It wasn't like being cool and stuff like that. It was just kind of crazy. And I felt like we were losing a little bit like that by pigeonholing ourselves into the metal thing. And
Yes.
I think that's what was happening. And I don't want to sound black. I don't want to put our band down because
No,
I
no,
love it.
God, no, absolutely.
But and it was, but we and with that Coup d'etat album, we opened for Kiss, which was a big experience because we were playing on giant stages and
Well,
stuff.
absolutely. Did you go to Germany then, Cologne, to record that album?
Yes, yes, and that was great. And Dieter Dierks was like a tough ass guy to work with. He was like, yeah, like he was like his father was a conductor, and he's a great musician. He's a great,
Right.
but he's a real nitpicker, but a good great musician, and I think he did a great
Because he
job.
just worked with, he had worked with the Scorpions before that, hadn't he? So he'd
He
obviously.
worked Scorpions and Accept.
Right, there you
Yeah,
go. And at
yeah.
that stage, I mean, you were talking about sort of you'd lost your humor. What was the dynamics like with the
Well,
band?
we didn't lose total Euro, but it was a little bit, like, yeah, yeah.
But it does happen. I mean, most bands start with that innocence, don't they? I find that, doing these interviews, most bands have a 5-year narrative. They have 12-month honeymoon and they're getting together. They have no idea. They get that first single, the first album, and in the UK, it was often this DJ called John Peel would play them and they would get a John Peel session and things. And, the UK is tiny, isn't it? Literally little place. And you get their transit van, they go around all the little cities and towns, their alternative nights. It's innocent fun, and they're just having a great time because they're young kids. The
Yeah.
second album, it's good, and everyone's getting a bit more serious. And then by the third album, there's things that people hadn't quite worked out or understood about, the industry, who'd signed what document, where the money was going. Everyone's thinking, well, we're working harder than ever, but I've not seen any cash. And, there's those kind of things that happen. And, that's what I've found. And then mostly, and in the UK, most bands break up after going to America because it's like, oh my God, America just broke us, because it's such a big place and you just end up driving for eight hours to have
Oh,
the gig, then get back, drive for 8 hours or
we
whatever.
yeah, we did this twice. Drive out to drive tour tour play our way out to LA. One time we drove all the way back straight from LA, 54 hours, and we just switched drivers. It was like, we used to call it the road face. You know what I mean? We'd be
Yes.
just driving, you stop and get gas, you get out, you don't know where you are, and then you just get back in the car. We drove straight. We did, and then one time we did the reverse. We drove from New York to LA straight. It's 50, 60 hours of just nonsense. And like our manager was like, "How do you guys want to go out there? You want to hit a couple hotels or something?" No, we're going to do it straight.
Yes, it's quite something, isn't it, doing
Yeah,
those.
but you make a good point. I mean, I think like for our band it was a little unique. You had Rod Swenson, who was like he was in control, the manager, and Wendy and Rod were a couple, so they traveled separately. And they kind of took planes a lot. While we were like the other four people, the four guys, we drove. And I'm not going to complain about that because they missed out on a lot of fun, a lot of good sights.
Yes.
But that kind of started getting, I would say, some of the guys that, as I said, had left the band during this period, and partially had to do with, money. They thought they had other opportunities. Um, and I can't blame them. But I was a good soldier and stayed with the band. Um, I forgot to tell you that West Beach. We added West Beach as a second guitar player. Um, Shortly before New Hope for the Wretched, and he stayed with the band. And he continued working with Wendy. But I think that my relationship, which for me, when I started the band, it was very close working with Rod and Wendy, putting the band. We had lots of fun. Um, I'll just tell you, I don't know how much time we have,
Oh
but
no, that's fine.
we had I'm going to jump back to before New Hope for the Wretched, and this helped us, that propelled us. Um, we had this is sort of great plasmatic story. We we had this idea, or I should say, Rod had this idea of playing a free show on one of the piers on the Hudson River, and these are piers that are like abandoned. They're just fucking abandoned on Hudson. They don't have them anymore. If they have them anymore, they've been turned into parks
Yes.
or like tennis courts or something. And the yuppies and the highfalutin people are over there now. You know what I mean? And New York, also, you got to look at New York in the 70s, where I was. It was a desolate place. Nobody wanted to live in the East Village. Nobody wanted to be a musician. Now everybody wants to be a musician. Everybody wants to be an artist now. Nobody wanted to be an artist. It was it was a scary place that you had to be very careful with, and there was a real griminess back in the 70s, how we started, and it was like so. We had this idea of doing a free concert on one of these piers, and the piers were just empty. I mean, it wasn't like you couldn't walk out on it. So we got a permit to say we were going to do a music video. So a stage was built at the end of the pier, and I contributed to building the stage with other people. And we built the stage, put these like phony amps all over the stage to look real. This took a couple of days.
Hmm.
And we put drum checks and everything. We had a big sounds thing. And then we put posters all over the town saying free concert this day. Because we were doing a music video, the police came and help us out, and the fire department, but they didn't know that we're going to have, they didn't know about the free, we posted around that it's a free concert. And then we told all the news stations that we're doing a concert. So the plan was we would play 5 songs. I think we pre-recorded the songs except for the vocals. And I'm giving you all the inside secrets here. And we had a pyro guy that didn't have a clue to what he was doing. He was missing he was missing a finger. Not the pyro guy that we eventually got. And he had put underneath the stage these big 10-gallon tanks, cans. You ever see these big cans or cans? And he had cut them in half with a blowtorch and filled them with gasoline. There was about 6 of them underneath the stage, and had wired them so that would be the explosion, right? Which was totally illegal. You know what I mean? You can't do that. And there was a ramp going onto the stage. So the plan was Wendy was going to drive a Cadillac from the far end of the pier and drive it towards the stage. It's on YouTube. You can see it. She drives it towards the stage. We're playing up there, jamming and everything like that. And then Wendy jumps off the stage, runs to the end of the pier, the front of the pier, I should say, gets in the car, drives the car, and goes up the ramp. The whole stage just blows up. I mean, it was like hot. It was like out of control. And we had sandbags behind the amps to stop the car because we wanted to use the car again. And
Right.
the car just kept going. It just went through the bags and sandbags and everything, and went right into the Hudson River. We all ran out. The police, the fire, everybody. We were like this is backstage. We were looking out into the water, and there goes the car into the Hudson River, and it's still there. And on top of it, the way we got there was with a helicopter. We flew in on a helicopter. It was like unbelievable. It was like Altamont, you know what I mean? We're coming in, And so but that was all done by ourselves. There was no
Yes.
record company. There was no pyro company. There was no lighting company. it was all by the seat of our pants, you know? So that was the fun of the Plasmatics. And,
And and I was going to say, did you enjoy making the video as well in the desert with the bus blowing up? Were you involved with that one as well?
I was. That was good, but not as that was not as much fun as that pier video.
Gee, you took a lot of risks, though. I'm amazed that no one got seriously hurt.
There was some injuries. I was walking, I, I mean, uh, I remember one time Wendy shot me with the shotgun, right? In my leg. And I still have a scar on my leg from that, like it shoots you, but it was like, blanks, but
Yeah.
like up close, it's still, uh, there was some injuries. I have scars on my knees from the glass from the TV, and that Wendy got beat up by the police in Milwaukee, but the killer is we were all walking around without any insurance. People are like talking now, like in this country here, like we don't have, you have to pay for insurance, like 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 I it's like insane. Like like my friends, my friends have kids. Like, well, he doesn't have any insurance and everything like that and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, like, gee, I was driving around the country for 5 years, blowing off shit. I didn't have any insurance, medical insurance. Anything that happened, I just didn't pay the hospital. You know what I mean? And they would
Yeah.
send me bills, and that was it. So that's another thing. People say, "Oh, we don't have insurance here." Well, you just go to the hospital, you don't pay, and then they forget about it. So in a way, we do have insurance. Well, that was
Yes.
that was the old days. That's the old days. Now you could never do that now in New York. Now,
No.
I mean, you'd be arrested.
And with New York at that stage, I mean, obviously there had been the rise of hip hop or rap music, and then there
Yeah, well,
was
that
like,
didn't.
and
Yeah.
then there was Studio 54 and disco, and then you had the Mud Club appear. Did you, by then, were you kind of just so fixated on the band that these things kind of passed you by?
No, no. Oh, well, first of all, the Mud Club started around the time of the Plasmatics, around 1977, 78. I might be a little off. So one day I go over there. We for our first single, right? The Mud Club was like worse than Max's. It had a lot of their attitude was ridiculous there. All the hipsters, and they thought they were cool over there and stuff like that. I was never a bit. It was like the posers are over at. I'm going to be honest with you. It was Poserville over there. You know what I mean? Like 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 during the Plasmatics. That's another thing. I didn't have time to hang out and go out and do all that stupid stuff. You know what I mean? And thank God. But so our first single, right, comes out. It was we pressed it ourselves.
Was that
Um,
Butcher Boy?
yeah, Bitter Baby, yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I go over to the Mud Club, because we were trying to get it in the jukeboxes and stuff like that. I go over to the Mud Club, and you know, they don't know who I was. I mean, like so. But I had a Mohawk haircut, right? And I had my leather jacket on. I go in, hi, how you doing? Can you play it in? And then somebody comes up to me and says, hey, somebody wants to meet you, right? And I go over. This was like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. There was nobody there. 6 o'clock, maybe 7. And who's in the booth? It was Frank Zappa. And he's sort of like, nice to meet you. How are you doing? I go, fine. And that was it, right? 6 months later, I'm up at the guitar stores and they go, Stotts. People call me Stotts, like my friends, They go, hey, man, Frank Zappa's mentioned you in a song. I go, what are you talking about? There's a song by Frank Zappa called Mud Club. And the lyrics, I'm going to paraphrase, I go into the Mud Club and there's a guy with a leather jacket, a blue mohawk, and a serious leather walks in. You know what I mean? And I assume that's about me.
Yes.
So it was kind of funny. It's kind of funny how this stuff happens. So anyway,
Yes.
yes. So that's a Mud Club story.
The Mud Club, yes. So, so then so as we get to sort of 83, 84, you've had your third album, the studio
Yes.
album.
Yes.
So have you then toured further, like UK and Europe at that stage?
Well, we went over to London and we didn't play there,
Yes, you meant.
which I hate to admit, that was it. But we did do a sort of a European tour from Italy to France to Germany to Holland and Belgium, and so we did a tour like that.
Yes. And
And then,
were you going down well with audiences?
oh yeah, it was great. It was fantastic. I remember one time we were in Milan, right? I'm like, oh wow, we're in Milan, and there was like sort of a riot broke out outside of the club, and I don't, and all I got was like these guys, coming up to me like, "Are you a well, are you a communist or a fascist? Are you a fascist communist?" And I didn't understand the whole political, um, uh, you know,
My God.
overtones there. But everything went well. I
And
mean,
yeah, and did you meet and at that stage had you met Lemmy then at this point to
I,
do the
I
because
gotta, t-
because did you collaborate with Lemmy at this point?
yeah, I gotta tell you one quick story. If we had this, so we were in. Well, I remember we were in Rome, right? We were in Rome. They took us out to these restaurants. Oh, our equipment got delayed, so we were in Rome for an extra 5 days, and we were a record company. We're taking us out to all these dinners and stuff. I'm like, wow, like like in Rome, it takes like you sit down and you're drinking and having something to eat. Like 3 hours later, they ask you what you want. You know what I mean? It's like one of those. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like,
Sophisticated, sophisticated, no rush,
yeah.
time.
So there was this one guy, right? There was this one guy from the record company, and I was with Rod and Wendy and stuff. And I was starting. I had some wine, and I was having a good time. And at the end of the night, he's like, we're going to have some like Italian moonshine. And I go, what? So he brings out they bring out the bottles of grappa. They're constantly bringing out wine and this. And so they bring out the bottle of grappa, right? So I'm having some grappa. And he looked at me and he had glasses on and he puts his middle finger on, pushes the glasses at me and looks at me, says, "Do a line." And I was like, I thought it was like, some kind of Italian word, you know what I mean? Like, do a line. I was, what the hell? And he meant like, do a line, do a line. But I was with our band and that wouldn't have been a good idea. And we really weren't a do a line band. But anyway, that's the thing. So we did the coup d'etat during the coup d'etat record at the end. Yeah, it was after coup d'etat. We did a tour. Um, we did a single with Lemmy, and
Yes.
we went up to Toronto. We went up to Toronto, and we did "Stand by Your Man." We rehearsed it down here in the city, but there was really those guys are just like, I mean, like, I love those guys. I mean, I loved Lemmy, and I think I became a generally, close to Lemmy. I watched Quadrophenia with him doing
Right.
like, while he sat there like doing like getting high and drinking vodka and stuff and everything, and he's a great guy. But we were in, there was definitely tension between him and Fast Eddie. Fast Eddie didn't want to do the thing. He didn't want to do a record with Wendy. That's the bottom record with Wendy. He didn't want to do that. He was not into it. And Lemmy wanted to do the record, and we did it. But there was definitely one time we were in the studio. We were tuning up, right? And we're going to record. And Lemmy, like, when Lemmy tunes up, he doesn't turn it down. He's just like, dong, dang, oh, wow. You know what I mean? He's got the whole Marshall amp and he's tuning up, and Fast Eddie's in the control book. I think it's a little flat, Lemmy. No, it ain't. It's good enough. Whatever. So they Lemmy Fast Eddie was just, it's not in tune, Lemmy, it's not in tune. So Lemmy just keeps tuning in the bass until the string breaks, and he just throws the bass on the ground, and he goes in and sits and pouts, or sits and not pouts. He just pours himself another drink and turns on, some TV show or something like that. And then it was quiet for like 2 hours until those guys came back together. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like I'm not used to that type of stuff because I'm looking at the clock and stuff. But at the same time, but I saw something that very few people play. They all of a sudden they all get back together being friends. And Lemmy's like, I want to do a blues album, you know what I mean? And like they broke into these blues songs, like, Muddy Waters, Hoochie Coochie Man, and we had a concert there, right in the studio, and they sounded great. I wish somebody recorded that, but
Yes.
and but he was a great. He thought I was a bit nervous. That's my comment. Rich, you're a bit nervous. Calm down. He's always telling me, which I am. I am a bit nervous, and so, but I played with him again at a Joey Ramone party, and I became friends with him. I was talking to him on the phone for a while. You know what I mean? I, uh, actually, I shouldn't say this, but it's true. He called me up. He was like, "Well, like Fast Eddie left. Maybe you could join the band." You know what I mean? And like then he would call me again. I don't think I don't know. It was a compliment. Of course, it never happened, but I thought for a while there, like, I mean, I thought I was kind of a friend of his, but then time goes on, you know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. No, it's kind of yes. I think that's when Fast Eddie gets fed up, doesn't he, and leaves. Or do you all have T-shirts, or do they have T-shirts on with Wendy O. Williams or something like that?
Not that I know of, no.
God, I don't know. I think they're getting very tetchy, aren't they, at that point? And then what happens at this stage? You do the Stand By Your Man, and you do No Class as well, don't you, on the B side?
Another song called Master Plan. We did a song by us, Master Plan. We did a song by them, um, No Class, and then we did Stand By Your Man.
Stand By Your Man. It's a classic, actually. And
Yeah.
did Wendy enjoy working with Lemmy
I think she did, and when she went solo, and I think she did some appearances with Lemmy. They, 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 I think they liked each other. But after that, I actually don't even know the whole chronology of the whole thing. But we did that record, and the band shortly after. Um, I don't know if that was before, that was after Coup d'etat, and we did Coup d'etat, we did a tour with Kiss. And then a little while later, the band called, as far as I'm concerned, that was kind of the end of
that was it. Did you feel that that was kind of inevitable, the finish of the band or the end of
well,
the?
I didn't want it to end. I mean, I thought we could keep it going, but what happened was, from my recollection, of course, somebody might disagree, but that Gene Simmons offered to produce the next record, right? So we started working on the next record with Gene. He came down to our rehearsal space, and we were working on songs. I have a couple of songs, and he it was a decision was made that it wasn't going to be a Plasmatic record, but it was going to be a Wendy Williams record. Um, and I felt that was it for me. You know what I mean? There wasn't. That was it.
Yes.
I'm done. And then she did a solo record. I have about 4 songs I co-wrote on that record. And Wendy went on to do that solo record with Gene, and then she did a couple other stuff after that, which I really was not part of. I don't know anything about that whole after that
Yes.
initial Plasmatic stuff. You know what I mean?
That was the end of that.
Yeah.
Yes. God, so was the last time you played with her on that time with Motorhead, or was it another time a bit later, you
Another time I played with Motorhead. Um, I played with Lemmy at a Joey Ramone birthday bash. They call them the Joey Ramone. They're like once a year, and I think I don't know who. It was sort of like they're kind of like a all-star type of thing. Different musicians get up and play. It's a lot of fun. You know what I mean? Debbie Harry has been part of those things. I have been part. Cheetah Chrome. Um, it's just a lot of New York people.
yes,
Um, yeah, and then then I just want to add this is that I started a band
yes,
after the Plasmatics called King Flux.
King Flux.
Yeah, now that has a lot of different personnel and changes. I started working with John Bouvar on it. We made some demos. Then we switched around. John left because he played with Little Steven. I'm going to just run through this quickly. I befriended a guy named Billy Hilfiger, who just happened to be the brother of Tommy Hilfiger. And then he brought his brother Andy in. Billy and Andy played with me, and we did quite well playing around New York. We always had a little issue switching singers. Um, and then we had Tony Petrie, who played in the Plasmatics and played in Twisted Sister. Tony played with us for a while. Then we got Marky Ramone in the band. And then that ended. I tried to do a solo thing, Richie Stotts, the Richie Stotts experience. And one of my last shows, we opened for the Ramones, and Wendy came back on stage. It was the first time I saw Wendy un, first time I saw Wendy was around 1990, and the band broke up. Plasmatics broke up in '83, and Wendy came up and sang a song, which was really nice. So that's the whole story. And
Yes,
right and here and I'm trying right now to what I want to do is there's some unreleased. We never put out any vinyl or record with King Flux, and that's another story, which is kind of like I since I had been in the Plasmatics, I kind of didn't want to like just put something out and nothing happened. So I was hoping that we could do something a little bit better. We got some offers, and in retrospect, I probably should have taken those offers at the time, and I didn't because I don't know what the hell I'm doing as far as being a decision maker with the business. But right now, I have some unreleased material, and so I want to. I'm putting together a little compilation, and I think it's kind of for historical
yes.
benefit.
Well,
And
we love archiving. I think
yes,
archiving is
yeah,
important because these things are out there, and well, not out
yes.
there. That's the problem.
So
But they need to be out there, don't they? Documented.
yeah, so that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm working on now. And it's funny because I just the other night I went to Andy Hilfiger, who played in the band. He has a fashion line um, called Andrew Charles, and of course, it's Tommy's brother. And I went to his opening of his fashion line the other night. It was a real funny. Like there was all these characters there, like Dennis Dunaway from Alice Cooper and Ricky Bird uh, from Joan Jett, and it was some other people, like all these kind of Steve Conti. He was a replacement for Johnny Thunders and New York Dolls, and it was all these. This guy Night Bob, who's like a sound guy, but all these people were there, and it was like very it was like the old timers were there, and it was kind of fun to go to this opening the other night,
Well, yes.
to
God,
hang
that's
out.
that
And
was
Tommy
quite.
Hilfiger was there.
Tommy, you said Tommy.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
It sounds like it's full of beautiful people. But then, so how do you navigate your 90s then? What do you do? I mean, you've got a decade of music, born more than a decade.
Okay,
Of,
so
of,
that's yeah. So that's I think we okay. So after So, so after the Plasmatics, I did King Flux,
Yes.
and I I did that for 3, 5 years, and I part of that is the Richie Stotts band or the Stotts band, whatever Richie Stotts experience.
Yes.
But I'm just going to call it all King Flux. You know what I mean? To make it simple. And I did that to about 89, 90. And somewhere I just had an epiphany that this ain't happening for me anymore. You know what I mean? I realized that I got to move on. It's not that it's not happening, but I needed something else in life. You know what I mean? I didn't want to be a martyr to the music business. I just didn't want to like just play and pump. After the Plasmatics, I didn't want to go back and maybe I'm a snob or whatever you want to call it, but I just didn't. I wanted to try something different. So I went back to school. I had gone to school a long time ago, but didn't finish my degree, and I really felt that I wanted to finish my degree, and I went back to school with the idea of becoming a teacher, a teacher, and I chose. I always liked science. I got a degree in geology, science,
Oh, right, of course, yes.
and I actually did so well in school. I mean, like I was like I was really good at math. Now I used to hate math, but I did a science degree, and I did so well. I got a full scholarship out of Indiana University, and I got a master's degree in geology. I spent a couple of years out there. It was fully funded. I got paid, um, and I did a gig. I did a job as a research scientist at a national laboratory,
Right.
and I came back to, but I didn't. It wasn't. I think I just loved school just for the love of school. I it was like I just loved this, and I liked being around. There was a lot of young people, and I was like, wow, there's a life outside of the music business. It's like there's people that get excited about things that are not music related, and I was very attracted to that, um, and just the love of pure learning, and also science. There's a lot of interesting stuff. And I also I was out in Montana. I did field work out in Montana, which was really beautiful, for 2 months out in the mountains and stuff, and with young people that could hike mountains a lot better than I could hike, but I kind of kept up with them, and it was a challenge for me. And I wasn't resting on the fact that I was in a rock band. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I was like, okay, yeah, yeah, sure. They knew I was in a rock band, but I still had to do the work. And I loved that. It's like I got away from the whole music business, and I came back to New York. My parents, my mother and father died, and my mother was sick, and my father died. So I came back to New York. I thought I'd never come back. I came back, and I needed a job once again, getting a job. So I started right on the bottom. I worked for a company called Thomson Reuters, Reuters and stuff. And I got a job right on the bottom level in technology. And I didn't have a science degree, but I learned a lot about some programming and computer stuff, and computers had just started. And what I learned from young people were they were fearless towards computer, and I try to take that attitude as an older person. Old people are like, oh, I'm so scared, I don't know how to do anything. I learned that you just gotta kind of, it's like it was like it's like playing music for young people, and stuff. And nowadays it's a whole nother thing. And this, I'm talking about 1996, 97, 98.
Yeah.
And I worked my way up through the financial companies in Wall Street. And I started with Thomson Reuters. I moved to the Federal Reserve Bank, which was incredible, you know. and some of these companies flew me around. I flew to San Francisco, Dallas, Chicago, Boston. You know, I was pretty good. You know, I did, and which was great too. And then finally, my last job, which was really the job, was I got a job at J.P. Morgan, which was like the bar is high there. That's what I would say. Like really smart people, and the technology people. They're doing a lot of cutting edge there. And I worked there up through the pandemic, and that was it. And I retired officially from the technology field. But I don't consider myself retired. You know, like I don't like that word. Like, oh, you're
No.
retired. You know what I mean? No, I'm not playing golf and stuff like that. I hate golf. Um, so I I wasn't sure what to do. And then, you know, but with a little encouragement, I started like kind of like I started doing some signings, you know, like going out to Phoenix, some of these monster shows and being Richie Stotts. And like I couldn't believe that people wanted me to be there. And I did a couple of those for a while. And then I got invited to be a guest guitar player for this band called Tits Out. They're down in Austin, and they're a plasmatic tribute band. Unbelievable. They're unbelievable. There's three girls lead singer, named one girl named Susie Bravo. She's fantastic. There's two girls in the band, Cece and Omega. Steve is a guy named Steve. Susie's husband plays guitar, and John plays drums. And we did a show down in Austin. I thought it was fantastic. And there was a promoter from New Orleans, and he wanted to come down to this festival called Creepy Fest. So I played Creepy Fest this summer. I went down there. And you know, it was so amazing because I'm playing with like these are young people. You know what I mean? Like not everybody's young, but the bands are young. There's an energy, and there's a lot of really good music. I saw this
So,
band called
were you in a? Did you form a band, or were you with this other band?
No, I was a guest. So what I did like, you know, 5 or 6 songs with them. And they're
Right.
all
Yeah. Richie Stotts with Tits Out.
yeah, and it's plasmatic. Listen to this. We saw up a guitar, we got fog, the whole thing. It's like almost like a miniature plasmatic show. It has the excitement. It has the right spirit. And my problem as a guitar player is people say, "Oh, you know, why don't you start a blues band or something like that?" It's not going to work for me. I got to do something that has some kind of, I don't want to say theatrical side, but it's got to have the right spirit for me to be that musician. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I know I hate to say musician, but more of a performer. You know, like you know, like people like to talk shop about guitars with me. First of all, I'm a left-handed guitar player. I can't play anybody else's guitar. I have my own guitars. Everything about me, unfortunately, it's my own fault, but it's kind of like I have to make it my own thing, unique way. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so, anyway, that's the story, Morning Glory.
Yeah, well, and just okay, yeah. So that must be quite exciting. And are there, is it the case then that young people are discovering the plasmatics?
Well, what's surprising to me, and here's a good example. I'm playing down in New Orleans this summer, and here comes Summer from Tulsa. It's like a song. I thought there'd be a song somewhere. So Summer comes down from Tulsa, right?
Yes, that is a
And
song.
she's there for the show. Guess what? She has a tattoo of me on her arm. So she's not. I mean, this is not. Oh, hold up. Oh, fuck. I'm gonna
Don't.
run. I'm gonna run out of juice here for a
Oh my
second.
God! Don't run out
No,
of
no, no,
juice.
no, no, no. I'm gonna move my seat. Okay.
Yes, yes. Do move your seat because this would be a disaster. Because this is almost. I know after all this time.
Well, now I'm gonna hold on.
I think that's a song actually. Hold on. Is that the Temptations? Oh, I don't know. Anyway, we're almost there.
Okay, I'm almost there. I'm just getting the plugging in. I'm going to change seats. Okay, I
Change.
didn't think this would happen,
No, but then
but
we can never predict the future, so that we can have a go at guessing it, but we're always
okay.
wrong.
Let me. Okay, since we're not really filming, I can just talk like this. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So you found somebody with a tattoo of you on their
Yeah.
arm.
There's actually, I know 3 people that have tattoos on me. This woman came down, this girl came down, and she has a tattoo of me. So a lot of the young people, surprisingly, like I can't believe it. I'm been shocked because when I started this whole thing with, like I told you, these signings and stuff, I said, who the hell remembers the Plasmatics? I've been down to Phoenix for like a signing thing where I set up a little booth. I have things. These kids are coming out of the woodwork, long haired kids and stuff, and they're like young and they know the band. They know more about the band than I do. Um, there's
Yes,
this
yes.
band, there's this band. I'm going to give a plug for this band. There's a band down in New Orleans named Brat or the Brat, and they're a 4-piece band. They got a girl that looks kind of like Britney, a cute a girl that's very athletic, young, and two guys with really long hair and stuff, and a really cool drummer, and they're it's kind of like, I wouldn't know how to describe it. It's kind of thrash metal, but it's punk, but it's funny. Well, it has a sense of humor, and there's a lot of this stuff going on. There's a whole scene um, of bands that are young that are out there that are under the radar to the mainstream media. You know what I mean?
Yes. I'm amazed you haven't, well, perhaps you will one day get to play the Las Vegas punk bowling weekend as, with your other band. Well, not with the
Yeah,
other band.
actually, that place has that. Well, I just found out about that. The punk Los Angeles. Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Well, I would imagine there's also a punk museum as well in Las Vegas.
There
So,
is. I've spoken to those guys about coming out there, but well, yeah, their deal is not that great. You know what I mean? To go out there, um,
yeah.
but I could talk about the deals. There's a whole racket out there of all this stuff.
Yeah, I would imagine. But just
Yeah.
also, you collaborated with your wife, didn't you, Carla, on several
Carla,
songs,
yeah,
which I
she's
was
right.
listening to. That's a very different vibe. This is a very acoustic, quite a sort of not spiritual, but quite a lovely vibe. This album, 100 Lovers album.
It is. So you've heard that, right?
I had played it. Yes,
Yeah,
I was like, this is very intriguing.
yeah, it's great. She like her musicianship is ridiculous. It's that good, and like,
Yeah, I did see her. I
and
thought,
she doesn't
crikey.
like. I try to tell her this, and she said, no, 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 no. But she really is that good.
A classical pianist.
Yeah.
And
Well, how would you describe the music?
well, it reminded me. I must admit, I did go in the 90s, get a little bit into new age music, singer songwriters. It was and there was little elements of her vocals as well as her sort of lyrics, which were just they felt quite, not spiritual in a religious way, but quite light and, yeah, kind of quite beautiful actually. And, yes, it was gorgeous.
Yeah, she's great. I'm glad you listened to it. It is. She has another album too. Before that, it's a little bit different, and in some ways, I like that one better. Um, I I
I'm
can't.
surprised she hasn't done more music, actually.
We got to get her to do another song. I mean, some more music. She has a bunch of songs. Um,
But that was
yeah,
like 20 years ago. You need to get back in the studio.
I will. She's in the background. I think she can hear you, but she's hiding.
She's too modest, I tell you. I was like, blimey, this is quite different as after playing lots of the Plasmatics. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, it's like it sounds like you had an amazing adventure, but I mean, to be honest, it's an incredibly tragic end to your singer, isn't it? Actually, did how did you manage to cope with that? Like kind of knowing what a messy finish it was.
Well, the last time I saw Wendy, I mentioned before, I opened for the Ramones, and Wendy came. My band, Richie Stotts, opened for the Ramones. I think it was 89 or 90, and Wendy came up and we did a song, and that was the last time I spoke to her. And Rod Swenson and Wendy moved up to Connecticut, and he was doing a job. Sorry if I'm sitting on a couch now. He got a he was doing something at the University of Connecticut up there, and they were living actually in the woods in this building that they built, this thing. So she was so totally isolated up there. I think she wanted to do. There was talk about maybe doing like a plasmatic get together, reunion, whatever. Um, eh, I felt that I was kind of back in school and all this stuff. It didn't really work out, but I didn't get any sense that for the few times I spoke to Rod during that period that there was any issue with Wendy. Um, and I felt that they were always kind of private about their stuff, so I never really pried. But the feeling was that everything's fine. He was working up there. She was like working in a he was working in the school. Wendy was working like in a health food store or something. And I was working a job, computer stuff. And I came home one night and somebody calls me and said, turn on the news. And Wendy had killed herself. And why she killed herself, I have no idea.
Yeah, because it was like she'd worked on, but there was those, the whole food shop looking after animals, vegetarian, clean living. It seemed like after that crazy world of rock and roll, living in the rural landscape would have just been quite a healing experience.
Yes, it could have been, but I don't know. Yeah, it might have been challenging for her too, coming from the rock and roll thing. I mean, Wendy always lived as for the time I was with knew her. She was very concerned about living a healthy life. Eating the right foods. I mean, she never drank or did any drugs that I know of. That I did. I mean, I was, I was, I was, I mean, I, I drink beer and, I did during that time,
Yes, well,
but the band was not a druggy band, I mean, everybody was kind of like, and especially Wendy. So I don't know what drove her to that. It might have been just the isolation or depression, or she might have had underlying. I mean, it's all speculative for me.
yes,
And
well, yeah, I know it's not good to speculate, but no, it was just a very sad story. It's never,
yeah,
and when somebody sounds like they were quite all right, it always is even more shocking. I don't know why, but it is. So yeah, it must have been. Has all the band's work been nicely archived now and documented? And like people love doing box sets now, don't they? There's
no,
Cherry Red Records in this country love doing nice
no,
box.
no, because it's all controlled by our manager,
Right.
and he's gonna he has a certain perspective, vision, remember the way he wants to project the band, and it's different than the way I see what I remember the band was. So
Yeah.
there is a I would say there's definitely um, a different viewpoint. Like I put a website together and I try to like as best I can document, pictures and stuff like that. But unfortunately, all the video footage and everything like that that was done, he owns that. And
Right.
he unfortunately we have, I don't really want to talk.
No, no, God, gee, let's not just not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it's just a, because you must have seen recently in the last like 5 8 years. Because when I started doing these interviews, there was very little interest in the 80s scene. Well, quite a lot of it really. But then you must have seen this kind of like books, memoirs, exhibition films. I mean, it's kind of quite relentless at the moment, and which is great for us music fans. But you're just thinking, the most obscure band have had a film about them, or exhibitions, and everyone's writing a memoir, aren't they? I just wondered, the Plasmatics has got a lot of work and quite a history, and visually quite amazing. So
Well, I think there's a story to be told there, but I like to see, from my perspective, a little bit more honest and truthful thing. I will say this: there was some kind of thing released by our management maybe 15 years ago, and I was cut out of a lot of the stuff.
yes. Yes. Well, just all mention of you, or just pictures of you.
I've cut out of the videos,
Crikey. Yes, yes.
and
Oh,
so that's a whole very touchy situation. And I don't want to
no, no, God.
create animosity, but that's the truth.
Yes, yes. Well, yeah. Well, no,
And
it's
I
a
mean,
shame.
I just want to move forward. I mean, I had such great memories of the band, and like I was telling from the beginning, it's I love the band, and if I'm cut out or something like that, it's unfortunate, but I'm moving on. You
Yes,
know,
absolutely. And when you look back at the work and the stuff that you did, I mean, what would you say were your, the record particular songs that you would be proudest of that you did with the band? Which would be your top 3 to 5 songs of the Plasmatics? You think, God, they were classics.
well, oh, that's a hard question, but I'll just off the top of my head, off coup d'etat, I think "Put Your Love in Me," um, "The Damned," uh, um, and "Path of Glory." Uh, um, on metal, I'm going to go through the records: "Metal Priestess," uh, "Lunacy," "Master Plan" on Beyond the Valley, and of course the first album, Tight Black Plants, Butcher Baby. I would say that, but I
Yeah.
I, I don't think I can really put it down for songs. I just like, I mean, look at the first album. The album cover is just, and that was a great, that was Rod's idea, and he did a. I give him total credit on that. Although I did say, I think the idea of me jumping on a pool I don't know if you know that thing. I think I was the one that jumped into that inner tube with the guitar, and I thought that kind of worked. So,
Yes.
so like, there's a good example. You have Swenson comes up with the idea of putting the Cadillac in the pool, and then we get there, and there was a big tube. I said, well, "Let me get in it," and then I was floating around the tube. So all that's what I mean. It was kind of like, I'm really proud of that, um, and 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 like, I'm proud that people remember the band.
Well, yes, absolutely. And then going forward, then what's you've just had this the date this summer. What have you got sort of lined up, sort of for the winter period? Have you got any projects or any
Well,
kind?
that's my conundrum now. Like, all of a sudden, after I did this show, I was like, "Oh God, I just want to like sit and eat." Like, I went out to Canada this summer, and I had a great time, and I come back, and it's like, now I feel like I got to do something else, and I was like, "Do I have to do something else?" I thought that was it, but I would like to do. I, I mentioned the King Flux. That's I want to put this out. This how it's going to work. I'm not sure, but I'd like to put put out like a historical thing with some of the songs that were out there, and maybe put like a like make a final release of that with maybe a little artwork. I have a good friend named David Brinley.
Yes.
He teaches down at the University of Delaware. He's a great friend and a great artist. He has helped me with the website, and it's really been super encouraging to 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 me. He's actually come up to my house here and helped me practice the Plasmatics songs, getting ready for these shows. So he's been really very helpful. So I've been working with him. So to answer your question, we're going to work on putting this King Flux thing out, and I'm going to talk to Andy Hilfiger, who I just saw the other night, which I mentioned, and um, and get his input. As far as playing goes, um, if there's another show that I could do with Tits Out, like you mentioned, the Las Vegas thing, I, I don't. I don't know how that works. I mean, those people are in Austin, Texas. I'm up here in New York. I know they mentioned that they'd like to do a show up here in New York, but to get it's you gotta it's gotta make it. It's hard to make it work financially. It's got to make sense.
Yes.
I don't want to do something where it doesn't make sense financially. I think that's really important. Um, it doesn't. I mean, I have to make a lot of money, but I'd like to be able to cover my expenses. And so far, I'm in the black. And I want to
That's all.
keep it that way.
Well, absolutely, yes. It is a bit of a mug. I love your website, by the way. It's really been well put together, hasn't it?
That's David Brinley, and he's great, and he's done some really good work. He's worked with the band Ghost, and he's got some other stuff. Artwork he does. He does, like I said, he teaches. He does his own artwork, but he also does some work with rock and roll bands. And I know he's got some stuff coming out, but I don't want to say what they are to jinx it.
Yes, my God. The band did rock live, didn't it? You were quite the unit, weren't you?
Well, I think we did. I think I think with all said and done, we hung in there, and I mean, I have so many great experiences that I mean, I drank What's that champagne? Dom Perignon, right?
Mm.
I drank Tom Perignon with one night at a private club with Rob Halford. I've never drank Dom. I can't pronounce it correctly. I never drank Dom Perignon champagne in my life before then, and I never have drank it after that. I'm not a high roller like that. I hung out with Lemmy. Um, it always irritates me when people talk about Lemmy and Jack Daniels, because when I knew Lemmy, he drank vodka and he wore white boots. And you know, um, I was friends with Joey Ramone. Oh, Joey Ramone. I wrote a song. I had a song released. I can't pronounce this word, posthumously. Um, yeah, on this album called and it's called Rock and Roll's the Answer. It's a great song. And I was good friends with Joey, and so uh, we wrote this song, and I got to know all the Ramones. But the other night I went to the Tommy Hilfiger, and I was talking to Dennis Dunaway from Alice Cooper, and he is a friend of mine, and Neil Smith played drums on the Plasmatics, and I know Michael Bruce, the other guitar player, and I know Alice Cooper. Here's an Alice Cooper story. We were down Phoenix one time, and I was in we were recording. I think we were doing. I don't know what we were doing. We were doing a music video. It might have been that one with the TV sets, with the bus and everything. And we were down Phoenix, and we go into this bar called the Mason Jar. Remember? And it was just a local dump. You know what I mean? Well, I shouldn't say a dump. It was a nice small club, and it was early, and we come in, and there was this guy, and there was two guys hanging out in at a booth, and we sat down. They say, "Hey, come over here." We sit and let them had a few beers, and this one guy named Renfield, right? I didn't know what that meant, Renfield. He says, "Hey, why don't you come out and take a look at this car we have?" And I went out to the car. It was a Rolls Royce. He says, "You know who you're talking to in there?" It was Alice Cooper. I couldn't believe it. And they wanted to take us up to his house. And we didn't. I didn't feel like doing that. We didn't have time. And then when I got home, I realized Renfield is the name of the person that transports the coffin uh, of Dracula from Transylvania to London. Renfield. Um, so I had some really good experience. We did a we did a we did a show on Second City TV in Edmonton, Canada, with John Candy. I did a skit with him. I'm just jumping off the things here. I hung out with David Lee Roth. I mean, the Plasmatics was a great experience, and
Yes, well, absolutely.
yeah, yeah, and we played live on TV here in New York on the Tom Snyder Show twice. We played Solid Gold. I mean, all these shows are people might not be familiar with anymore, but we did some stuff that just great. Like we did a show Fridays. I remember the guy says to me, says, "You're going to play for 25 million people live in a few minutes." I called my mom and dad off. I said, "You got to turn on the TV. We're going to play on TV." "Oh, well, okay. What channel is it?" So these are all like kind of innocent, funny stuff, that's just, and the list goes on, I'm just throwing stuff out.
Yeah, well, no, it's amazing. It's just, it's kind of quite emotional, really, isn't it? Because it's nearly 45 years ago, and these things happen, and you have that amazing experience. But it's both happy and sad, isn't it? I suppose it's just so sad the way that's so
Bittersweet is the good word.
bitter. It is bittersweet. It's
I say
beautiful.
that over there.
It's just a shame, isn't it, really, that Wendy, didn't manage to survive that last bit, really.
Well, if Wendy was alive now, and we really, if all parties would be willing, and it was, um, and I was involved, I mean, you could do a little thing, that might be really cool. Like, I don't know, but sometimes it's best to leave things like as they are.
Yes, this is also very true. But it's nice that, the music is kind of being played still and people are sort of appreciating it. And yes, and I'm sure yourself and your other band will sort of keep the memory going. It's nice that you've got this other little project. Actually, it sort of has
Yeah.
a focus, doesn't it? Really, to yes, keep the spirit going.
Yeah, keep the spirit, and hopefully something. One door closes, another door opens. And I'm 71 years old. I'm going to be 72 next month. I mean, I got to be realistic. I got to be realistic. Like the heart might want to do something, but it's time for. There's young people. You got to leave room for the young people there too. You don't want to be hogging stuff or.
No, God, no, 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 it's good. I mean, absolutely. Look, thank you ever so much for your time. This has been amazing to hear your story. And yes, I'm so pleased to sort of, yeah, manage to get this together, actually. It's been in
Okay,
around.
you're not putting this up on the my face on your thing, right?
Oh no, no, God, don't worry. No, there will be no visuals. But no, it's been amazing. I always find it quite emotional, really, hearing people's stories because it is part of one's life, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
that,
No,
and it's
I had a really good time. Thank you so much. Let me ask you this: when are I'd like to post this on my website, like put out a
yes. Well, what
newsletter.
I can do it in the next week, and then send you the link, and then you can, yes, take it from there and put it on your website because.
What? How soon would you send me that?
Do
And
you
what
want
would?
it? Do you want it? Because it's better actually to do it sooner than later. Actually, I could do
Yeah,
it this week, and then it will be done.
that would be great. And when would you put your? So you would put it on your website, and
Yeah,
then
and
and
I'll
then and then people can go there and access it, right?
Yes, absolutely. And then you could also have the link, and then you can have it on your social media sites.
Do you do an announcement on your site that?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Do you need anything from me? No.
No, that'll be fine. That'll be fine. But
All right. Where
yeah,
where are you located
in Norwich, in the UK.
Norwich or Nor?
Yeah, Norwich, Norwich,
Norwich.
Norwich. There's London. Then you go from London, you got Colchester, Ipswich, and then further up is Norwich. So it's in that department. So I'm not sure if you ever came this way, but
No, I just been in London, and that's all I've been to.
London, yeah, well, there you go. But look, I'm going to go to bed now. But thank you ever so much, and I'll be in touch this week.
Okay,
Promise.
thank you so much, Dave. Bye.
Yeah, take care.
Okay.
Yeah, take it. Bye. And that was a good end.
And that, dear listener, is the end of the interview. Well done for those who got there. Massive thank you to Richie for giving me the time for that. This has been the C86 show, David Eastaugh. If you want to contact me, you can on any of the social media platform sites. Just put in your search engine C86 show, David Eastaugh, and you'll find me. All these interviews have been archived on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean. It's true. Have a great week. Stay safe.